In 1985, Costco started selling a hot dog and a soda for $1.50. It still costs $1.50. Rent has gone up, beef has gone up. Buns, cups, ice, wages, all of it has gone up, some of it by a lot. Through 4 decades of recessions, supply shocks, and inflation, Costco has sold that same combo for the same $1.50, something like 200 million of them a year. And by the company's own account, it barely breaks even doing it. In 2015, when then CEO Craig Jelinek raised concerns to founder Jim Sinegal about the math on that combo, Sinegal's answer became company legend, reportedly some version of, "Touch that price and I will kill you." He wasn't entirely joking. The price never moved. Here's the strange part. Costco doesn't actually need that hot dog to make money. Last fiscal year, the company cleared north of $8 billion in profit. And a huge share of it, probably the majority, didn't come from selling you a single thing. It came from something you pay once a year, swipe a plastic card to access, and mostly forget about in between. Costco looks like a store. Walk in and it feels like one pallet of paper towels, a wall of TVs, a rotisserie chicken cheaper than a movie ticket. But underneath that, it runs on a completely different engine than the one printed on your receipt. So here's the actual question. If Costco is basically giving the merchandise away, capping its own profit margin on purpose, selling a $30 toy for the same cut as a $60 one, how is this a $275 billion company that just posted record earnings? Ask most people what Costco sells, and you'll get the obvious answer. Bulk groceries, cheap gas, a food court, enough paper towels to survive an apocalypse. Walk the aisles and that story holds up fine. 40-pound bags of rice, 6 packs of detergent, a rotisserie chicken at $4.99 that, adjusted for inflation, should probably cost double. It looks like retail. It smells like retail. There's even a receipt checker at the exit for reasons nobody has ever fully explained to a customer's satisfaction. But that's the part of Costco you're meant to see. It's not actually where the money comes from, and once you know where the money really comes from, you start noticing that almost everything else the company does exists to protect that one number. So let's follow it. Costco's fiscal 2025 numbers: $269.9 billion in merchandise sales, plus $5.3 billion in membership fees, for total revenue just north of $275 billion. On paper, membership fees are practically a rounding error under 2% of the total. Except that 2% carries the entire company, and to understand why, it helps to know where this model actually came from. Costco didn't invent the warehouse club. A retailer named Sol Price did in 1976 with a store called Price Club, built to sell near wholesale goods to small business owners who paid a fee to walk in the door. Jim Sinegal worked for Price before co-founding Costco with Jeff Brotman in 1983. And he carried the same DNA over: strip out everything that doesn't move product efficiently, charge for access instead of padding every price tag, and pass the savings forward hard enough that the fee feels like a bargain rather than a toll. Everything that follows is really just that original idea, run at a scale Sol Price never got to see. Start with the merchandise side, because it's the part everyone assumes is the whole business. Costco buys an enormous volume, often straight from manufacturers, and sells at prices that are, by design, barely above cost. There's an internal rule never written into INSEC filing, more corporate folklore than corporate policy, that caps markups at 14% on national brands and 15% on Costco's own Kirkland Signature line. A department store might mark up a jacket 100%. A conventional discounter runs 25 to 50%. Costco caps itself at 14%. On everything, including wine. A category where a 200% markup is considered unremarkable. That's not generosity, it's a mechanism. And it produces exactly what Costco wants: a gross margin around 11%. Roughly a third of what a typical big box retailer runs. Thin margins moved at enormous scale. Then there's Kirkland Signature, arguably the most quietly dominant brand in American retail. Most people think of a store brand as the cheap fallback, the thing you buy when you can't afford the name brand. Kirkland flipped that script entirely. In fiscal 2025, it generated roughly $90 billion in sales, close to a third of everything Costco sold that year. For scale, Procter & Gamble's single biggest brand, Tide, does around $7 billion annually. Kellogg's entire company does a fraction of what Kirkland does by itself. Spin Kirkland off tomorrow and it would instantly rank among the largest consumer goods companies on the planet, and almost nobody outside the industry would recognize the name behind it. Costco's own finance chief has described the target plainly. Kirkland items should land somewhere around 15 to 20% cheaper than the national brand equivalent, while matching or beating it on quality. Not the cheapest thing on the shelf, the smartest thing on the shelf. Kirkland is also the one place Costco allows itself slightly more room, 15% instead of 14%, while still undercutting the branded competition. It's margin, wearing the costume of value. Then there's gas, which Costco runs at a scale that makes it one of the largest fuel retailers in the country, almost as a side effect of getting cars into the parking lot. In the quarter, Middle Eastern conflict pushed pump prices higher this year. Costco posted its best gasoline volumes ever, a detail that says less about oil markets than about how many people now treat the Costco pump as their default station. There's a fifth stream too, small enough that it never gets its own headline, but consistent enough that Costco's own annual report calls it out by name: the co-branded Visa card. Every swipe generates a slice of card network economics that flows back to Costco. And the company has specifically credited the program as one of the drivers behind its improving margins in recent years. It's a rounding error next to $270 billion in merchandise sales. But it's the same pattern showing up again, a quiet, high-margin stream sitting underneath the loud, low-margin one. And finally, membership itself, $5.3 billion of it in fiscal 2025, up 10% year over year. It comes in two tiers: a standard Gold Star card at $65 a year and an executive card at $130 that pays back 2% on purchases, up to a cap. Nearly 83 million households now hold one or the other. Just under half of them, about 38.7 million, pay for executive. That smaller, pricier group alone drives roughly 3/4 of everything Costco sells worldwide. Add it up, and the store is really several businesses stacked on top of one another. A break-even merchandise operation. A $90 billion private label empire riding inside it. One of the country's biggest gas station chains. A card network side income nobody thinks about. And a membership program quietly doing the heavy lifting. Only one of those was built to turn a real profit on purpose. Here's where it gets uncomfortable if you're a competitor. Costco's operating margin profit as a share of revenue, before interest and taxes, sits around 3.1%. A typical department store runs somewhere in the high single digits to low teens. A software company might run 25 to 30%. Costco runs its entire $275 billion operation on a margin thinner than most grocery chains manage. That's not a flaw, it's the design. Costco isn't trying to extract maximum profit from any single sale. The 14% cap makes that structurally impossible. So the retail operation exists mainly to do one job: get you in the building, keep the card renewing, and let merchandise sales cover their own costs: inventory, warehouse leases, payroll, freight, without needing to generate real margin on top. Which raises the obvious question. If not from all that merchandise, where does the $8.1 billion in annual profit actually come from? Multiple industry analyses have put the answer at somewhere around 2/3 of Costco's total profit. In some years closer to 3/4, coming from membership fees alone. The math tracks directionally. A renewed membership carries almost no cost of goods, no shipping, no markdown risk. Once someone renews, that $65 or $130 drops to the bottom line nearly untouched. Merchandise, by contrast, has to survive freight, spoilage, labor, and a self-imposed 14% ceiling before a single dollar of it becomes profit. So the honest description of Costco isn't a retailer that also charges a membership fee. It's closer to a subscription business that happens to use warehouses as the delivery mechanism, the same underlying logic as Netflix and its content library, or a gym charging you monthly whether you show up or not. Except Costco's version of content is a pallet of Kirkland almonds and a $1.50 hot dog. Zoom into one member and the model gets even clearer. Say you're a Gold Star member. You pay $65 up front. Costco's cost to service that membership, the card, the systems, a sliver of overhead is small enough that almost the entire $65 becomes pure margin the moment you renew. Compare that to the merchandise side. Sell that same member a $65 cart of groceries, and after cost of goods, freight, and warehouse labor, Costco might keep a few dollars of it. The membership fee, dollar for dollar, is worth vastly more to the company than an equivalent amount of shopping. Then you actually shop. Frequent members spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 to $200 per visit, several times a month. On most of that spending, Costco earns its capped, roughly 11% gross margin, then hands a chunk of it right back out in operating costs, so the actual profit contribution from any single shopping trip is thin. Some items, the hot dog included, may not clear a profit in isolation at all. But multiply one $65 fee across 83 million households, layer in a 90% renewal rate, and the picture changes completely. The customer relationship becomes worth far more than any single transaction. A member who joins at 30 and stays until 70 might hand Costco somewhere between $3,000 and $6,000 in membership fees alone over that lifetime, almost pure profit before a single grocery run enters the math. That's the piece traditional retail arithmetic misses. Walmart or Kroger has to win you back every trip on every item against every competitor's shelf price. Costco wins you back once a year, automatically, unless you actively cancel. The $65 isn't a fee for shopping privileges. It's a prepayment that converts an occasional shopper into a committed one. And it's the reason Costco can sell you a $4.99 rotisserie chicken without its finance department losing sleep. None of this works, though, unless people actually want to keep paying it. So Costco engineers the shopping experience around a few very specific psychological levers. The most obvious is the treasure hunt. A typical supermarket carries 30 to 40,000 items, the same list, every visit. Costco deliberately stocks around 3,800 to 4,000 products at any given time, a fraction of that, and rotates a chunk of them constantly. Patio furniture in April. A pallet of discounted cashmere in October that's gone by Thanksgiving. You never know exactly what you'll find, which means you have to keep coming back to find out. Fewer choices, somehow, creates more urgency. Even the building plays a role. Walk into a Costco, and the floors are bare concrete, the rafters are exposed, and forklifts share the same aisles as shopping carts. None of that is an accident or a budget shortfall, it's a visual argument. Every dollar not spent on flooring or lighting or store design is a dollar the shopper is implicitly told went toward the price tag instead. The warehouse doesn't just hold inventory. It performs frugality, out loud, for every person who walks through it. That curation is ruthless by design. Vendors pitching a new product reportedly get told they have 5 seconds at 5 feet to earn a shopper's attention on the shelf, which is why packaging gets redesigned, sometimes from scratch, before a product ever gets a trial run. Costco has also been known to push suppliers to redesign the product itself for logistics. Not marketing reshaping a container of cashews from round to square, for instance, so more of them fit on a single truck, cutting tens of thousands of shipments a year. That's not a courtesy a supplier extends to a small chain. It's the kind of leverage that only exists at Costco's volume. Then there's the sunk cost effect, built directly into the model. Once you've paid $65 or $130 for the card, every trip you skip starts to feel like money left on the table. Costco didn't invent that psychology, but few companies have built an entire revenue line on top of it this deliberately. The fee stops being a fee. It becomes a nudge that quietly turns "should I shop here" into "I already paid for this." The executive tier adds another layer, a 2% rebate that only pays for itself once you spend enough, which is a subtle bet that once you're tracking your own cashback number, you start shopping to hit it. The same way people finish a coffee punch card even when the free drink barely covers the detour. And then there's trust, harder to quantify, but visible in every number that matters. A 92% renewal rate in the US. And Canada isn't an accident, it's the compounding result of 4 decades spent proving, hot dog by hot dog, that Costco won't quietly raise a price the moment you stop watching. The company spends close to nothing on traditional advertising. It doesn't need to. The $1.50 combo does the marketing for free. One office lunch order and one social post at a time. Which brings us to the part most shoppers never quite piece together. Costco is not, economically, a company that sells you groceries and gas. It's a membership company that uses groceries and gas as the reason to keep the card in your wallet. The warehouse, the pallets, the food court, even Kirkland's signature, all of it, is the delivery mechanism for a $65 to $130 a year subscription that converts almost entirely into profit. Flip the business model around in your head and the rest of the company suddenly makes sense. Why cap your own margins instead of maximizing them? Because a merchandise operation that's visibly, provably fair is exactly what makes 83 million households comfortable prepaying for a year of access before they've bought a single item. Why refuse to raise the price on a hot dog combo that by some accounts loses money? Because that hot dog was never food court revenue. It's a walking advertisement for the entire membership promise. Purchased 200 million times a year, by people who then go tell their friends about it. Most retailers try to extract the maximum dollar from every transaction. Costco does close to the opposite, extract the minimum, so that the one-line item genuinely designed to be profitable, the membership feels earned instead of resented. It's a strange kind of business. Costco makes its money by appearing, constantly and convincingly, like it isn't trying to make money off you at all, which makes the pricing question genuinely unusual, because Costco is one of the only major retailers on Earth with real pricing power that it mostly refuses to use. It could raise merchandise margins tomorrow. Given its buying scale, its brand trust, and a renewal rate most subscription companies would kill for, it could almost certainly push shelf prices up a few points before members noticed or cared. Senegal himself once described the temptation this way, that raising prices a little is easy and addictive, and once you start, you don't stop. Instead, Costco spends its pricing power somewhere else entirely, on the membership fee, which it raises periodically, most recently in September 2024, pushing Gold Star to $65 and Executive to a $130 without losing meaningful numbers of members. That single increase was projected to add a few $100 million to annual operating income, almost pure margin, with barely a ripple in renewals. That's the real pricing lesson hiding inside Costco's model. The company doesn't extract value where you'd expect it to on the shelf, because doing so would break the exact trust that makes the membership fee feel fair in the first place. It extracts value on the one-line item where raising the price doesn't register as a betrayal, because you already decided, once a year, that the relationship was worth it. None of this works without scale, and Costco's scale is close to absurd once you sit with the actual numbers. More than 900 warehouses across 14 countries. Over 341,000 employees. Roughly 148 million cardholders. And, crucially, somewhere around 3,800 to 4,000 total products company-wide, against the 30,000 plus a normal supermarket carries, and the six-figure count a Walmart supercenter stocks. That last number is the quiet superpower. Fewer products means each one sells in dramatically higher volume. A single Costco warehouse can move more units of one detergent SKU in a week than an average grocery store sells across its entire detergent aisle in a month. That volume hands Costco's buyers leverage most retailers can only imagine. Negotiate one enormous order instead of 20 small ones, and suppliers compete hard for the privilege of being the single detergent brand on Costco's limited shelf. It simplifies everything downstream. Fewer SKUs means simpler warehouses, easier forecasting. Less labor wasted restocking 1,000 slow movers, what the company internally calls intelligent loss of sales. Costco will happily not carry a product, or not stock 5 sizes of the same shirt, if the operational complexity costs more than the missed sales are worth. Even the corner office reflects the philosophy. Current CEO Ron Vakris started as a forklift driver at a warehouse in Arizona in 1982 and spent 4 decades working his way up before becoming just the 3rd CEO in company history in 2024. That's not a nice anecdote. It's policy, running all the way to the top. Which gets to the real question. Why can't Walmart or some hungry startup simply copy this? Some have tried. Sam's Club, Walmart's warehouse arm, runs a nearly identical membership model and has been investing hard self-checkout technology, digital tools, a membership fee increase of its own in 2026. BJ's Wholesale does the same at smaller scale. Sam's Club in particular has closed real ground rolling out exit technology that lets members skip the receipt check altogether. Something Costco still does the old-fashioned way, and pulling in a noticeably younger, more digitally native member base while it's at it. That's a legitimate challenge. But even Walmart's own warehouse arm, with more capital and more locations behind it than Costco has ever had, hasn't meaningfully dented that market share, which says something about how hard trust is to buy, even for a company with a $1 trillion balance sheet. And yet Costco still controls something like 62% of the US warehouse club market, more than Sam's Club and BJ's combined. The moat was never the warehouse format. That part is copyable. It's the trust. And trust compounds too slowly to be bought on a deadline. 40 years of an unchanged hot dog price isn't a marketing campaign a rival can replicate in a fiscal quarter. It's the accumulated weight of 4 decades spent visibly choosing members over margin, repeated so many times that people simply stopped waiting for the catch. Then there's Kirkland, which behaves less like a store brand and more like a walled garden. Manufacturers that produce Kirkland goods often can't even discuss the relationship publicly, and the quality bar sits high enough that Kirkland has become something rare in retail, a private label people specifically seek out rather than settle for. That took 30 years to build and isn't available to rent. And there's the workforce, rarely credited as a moat but clearly functioning as one. Costco pays meaningfully above the retail average a top hourly wage north of $30 and keeps people for years, with retention around 93% against an industry norm closer to 60 or 70%. Experienced staff means shorter lines, fewer mistakes, a shopping trip that feels calmer than the category average, which loops straight back into renewal rates. A competitor can match Costco's prices tomorrow. Matching 40 years of institutional memory and a workforce that isn't constantly starting over is a different problem entirely, none of which makes Costco bulletproof. The most immediate pressure is tariffs, and they land harder on Costco than on a normal retailer for a specific reason. That 14% ceiling doesn't flex just because input costs did. A typical chain can quietly pass a cost increase straight through to the price tag. Costco built its entire trust proposition on not doing that, which means tariffs get absorbed rather than passed along, at least for as long as the company can stand it. Costco spent much of 2025 and 2026 rerouting its supply chain, shifting production toward lower tariff countries, leaning harder on domestic Kirkland manufacturing, and filing suit to recover tariffs it argues it shouldn't have paid in the first place. Rivals like Walmart have already passed some of that cost to shoppers. Costco has mostly tried to hold the line instead, which protects the brand and quietly squeezes the margin at the same time. Then there's the gas station paradox. Costco just posted record fuel volumes, but that record leaned heavily on Middle East-linked oil prices pushing cost-conscious drivers toward the cheapest pump in town, a tailwind that can reverse as fast as it appeared. Some of this year's growth story is sitting on a foundation Costco doesn't control. E-commerce is the slower-moving threat, and it cuts both ways. On one hand, Costco's digital business is genuinely accelerating, comparable online sales climbing more than 20% year over year lately, app traffic up nearly 50% in a single quarter, and roughly half of new members signing up in the past 2 years are under 40, which suggests the model isn't just aging in place. On the other hand, Amazon Prime alone counts something like 58% of American adults as members, against Costco's roughly 28%, and its same-day delivery network dwarfs anything a warehouse chain can offer. Costco's entire model was built around getting a physical body into a physical warehouse. If the next generation of shoppers decides bulk goods should simply arrive at the door without the drive, Costco has to relearn a business it's run one way for 40 straight years. There's a quieter structural risk underneath all of it. The U.S. warehouse club market is close to mature. Costco already operates in most metro areas that can realistically support a location, which is pushing new growth increasingly overseas, into Japan, China, and pockets of Europe. The economics can travel reasonably well across a border buying power, and Kirkland both scale internationally, but the trust doesn't transfer with them. Every new market starts back at zero, with none of the 4-decade trust bank Costco has spent at home, on a timeline measured in decades rather than fiscal quarters. And every membership increase, even a successful one, tests the exact loyalty the whole model depends on. So far, renewal rates have barely moved. That won't hold forever, and Costco clearly knows it, which is probably why the hot dog still costs $1.50. There's also a wider backdrop worth naming. Prices for eating out have climbed roughly 4% over the past year alone. Inside an economy, some economists now describe as K-shaped spending strength concentrated near the top. Real spending among lower earners barely keeping pace with inflation at all. In that environment, a fixed $1.50 price isn't nostalgia. It's one of the last visible bargains left in American retail, and Costco is fully aware of what that's worth to a member deciding whether the card is still worth renewing. For a sense of scale, Costco's $275 billion in revenue is larger than the GDP of most countries on the planet. Kirkland's signature alone, spun out as its own company, would likely rank among the 10 largest consumer goods businesses on Earth, ahead of household names like Kellogg's. Something like 148 million people, nearly half the adult population of the United States, carry a Costco card. And the company runs the entire thing on a profit margin, around 3%, that a struggling grocery chain might consider a rough year. So go back to the hot dog. It was never really about the hot dog. It's the cheapest, clearest, most repeatable proof Costco has of a promise the whole business depends on. We will not quietly take more from you the moment you stop paying attention. Every capped margin, every intelligent loss of sales. Every year, Costco eats inflation on a soda combo. Instead of passing it along, all of it exists to make one specific transaction feel completely safe. The moment, once a year, when you let the company charge your card $65 or $130 without a second thought. Vacris has said publicly the price won't change as long as I'm around. That's the real business. Not the paper towels, not the 40-pound bags of rice, not even Kirkland, dominant as it's become. Costco sells trust, in bulk, at a fixed and predictable price, and it happens to use a warehouse full of groceries as the way of proving that trust every single time you walk through the door. The merchandise is the receipt. The membership is the business. Strip away everything else, and Costco's real advantage was never its prices. And it isn't even Kirkland. It's that the company found a way to turn, we're not trying to squeeze you into a business model with an 11% gross margin and a 90% renewal rate, and then defended that promise so consistently for so long that it became almost impossible for a competitor to fake. Anyone can cap their margins for a quarter. Anyone can sell a hot dog at a loss for a year. Costco has been doing both since Ronald Reagan's first term, which is exactly long enough that shoppers stopped bracing for the other shoe to drop. The biggest risk to that model was never Amazon or Sam's Club or tariffs. It's the day Costco decides the trust has been fully banked and starts spending it. So far, 40 years in, they haven't touched it. The hot dog still costs $1.50.